Served in?
Huh?
Can you tell us your name, your rank, and the branch of military you served in?
I served in the Army. I was a corporal. I took my training with combat engineers in Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
Okay.
And after I finished my basic training, I got put in a limited service, and I went down to New Orleans and joined the U.S. Army Band. And after being down there for 7-8 months, I got shipped out and went to England to the 19th Refreshment Depot and finished my career in the Army at the 19th Refreshment Depot.
And what war era did you serve in?
Europe.
Europe? Okay.
I was in England, I was in France, Belgium, and Germany.
Okay. What years did you serve in the military?
1942 to 1946.
And did you volunteer or were you drafted in?
I was drafted.
And how did the draft work during this time period?
Well, they just pulled my name out of the hat, I guess, and I was sent down to Fort Dodge, or Camp Dodge, where they recruited me and took my physicals and everything.
And how old were you?
20.
You were 20? Okay. What was your battalion or company or platoon?
I was with the 19th Refreshment Depot for almost 3 years. There wasn't no battalion, no nothing. It was headquarters, 19th Refreshment Depot.
Okay. What did you do prior to serving into the military?
What was that?
What did you do prior to being in the military?
I worked for Swanson's grocery store for a while after I got out of school, and then I worked for a furnace installer, learned a little bit about the metal trade, and in 1941 I hired out on the railroad, and I worked there until I was drafted into service.
And what was your job? What jobs did you do during your time in the service?
I played a trombone.
That was all you did?
That's about all I did.
I imagine you got pretty good at it then, huh? That's good. What did you do after you got out of the military?
I came home and did some work for my folks down home for that summer when I got home, and remodeling the house and that kind of stuff, and then I started a body shop on my own, and I signed up for a correspondence course with the Utilities Engineering Institute to learn the body and fender trade, and then I went to work for John Engel, and I worked there for 35 years.
And what would you say was the most difficult part about being in the military during that time?
The most important part?
Important, difficult, whichever one you want to answer.
I don't understand really what you mean.
What was the hardest part about being in the military at that time for you?
The toughest part was being in the combat engineers.
What made that so tough?
Well, the physical training we had. And then we learned about bombs and mines and how to set them up and how to blow bridges apart and how to build bridges and how to build houses.
Did you take part in any battles, campaigns, anything
Nope.
like that? Nope. Didn't see any active combat.
Nope.
Do you have any favorite memories of playing in the band?
Yeah, lots of them, but I can't describe them to you because that's only been 70 years, 73 or 4 years ago.
And did you serve like during the wartime or the peacetime?
During the war, World War II.
Okay. What characteristics do you feel served you best during your military service and after that?
The most important characteristics that's taught by my folks. They were pretty strict and I learned to follow orders. And that's what kept me out of trouble when I was in the service, was being able to follow orders.
And it's my understanding that you were a scoutmaster here in Cherokee for a number of years.
Yeah, quite a few years, from 1962 till 1990, 92, 93, in there someplace.
Before I was born, that's for sure.
That was before you was in it, I'm sure.
Well, before I wasn't even born then.
I had your dad in my troop.
Yeah. Would you say any of the skills you learned during the military helped you be a better scoutmaster?
Well, yeah, I learned all about mapping and compass work and doing first aid and that kind of stuff in the military, so I'm sure it helped me a lot.
Do you have any favorite memories of being a scoutmaster? Any
Oh
great
yeah,
stories?
I got lots of memories of being a scoutmaster. I went to Philmont 5 times, and I was up on the boundary waters 3 different times. And I had a lot of fun with the boys.
Is my dad a troublemaker?
Huh?
Is my dad a troublemaker?
No, he wasn't. He followed orders pretty good.
Well, I think that's all the questions I really have for you today. And I don't have any other questions. Do you have any questions for me? Just out of
No.
curiosity?
There's some of the medals that I qualified for there.
Shoot, I totally forgot that question. Did you? Oh, obviously you won some medals. You want to tell me about some of those? I
Well,
forgot that one.
They were just given to me for being in the service. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like participation awards.
Huh?
It's kind of like a participation award.
Well, just yeah, I guess that's what you call them. Participation. I qualified for being where I was at, when I was at, and that's how I qualified for the medals, was being where I was at and at the times I was there. And
Please tell us your name, your rank, and the branch of service you served with.
Harold Heskey. I was in the 49th Ordnance, Automotive Maintenance in Sendai, Japan.
When did you serve your military service?
February, let me see that. It's a long time ago. Okay. 49th Ordnance Maintenance Company. And I lived in Rembrandt, Buena Vista County, if that makes any difference. Where are we at here? I know I got back May 4th, 1947. I went in 46. It should be up here somewhere. February 15th, 1946. And come out in May 4th, 1947. Separation Center, Camarillo, California. Born August 3rd, 1927. Rembrandt, Iowa. I was in Section 9. Eyes blue, hair brown, 5'8", 145 pounds, I weigh a lot more than that now. Oh, let's see what else. February 27th, 1946 is when I went in.
Okay.
Yeah, 1946, Fort Smith, Minnesota. I was a truck driver when I was in there. Truck light 345.
I also have one more. I've got a couple other questions to go through.
And I was a AMM rifle, M1 rifle, April 46. World War II, Victory Medal, Army of Occupation Medal. And got all back over again here.
Were you a volunteer or drafted?
No, I was drafted. I tried to stay out as long as I could because I was a farm boy.
How did the drafting system work?
Huh?
How did the drafting system work?
I don't know, they wanted to draft you, they just drafted you.
Okay.
And if you could get out, you know, get deferred, I got deferred twice, I think. And then it comes summer and they said, this deferred the last time. Boom, they nailed me about a week later.
What was your job during your service?
Well, I drove truck most of the time, and one time I wasn't driving that, I was hauling a lieutenant around in a Jeep. That was neat.
Where did you take your basic training at?
At Fort Snelling, S-N-E-L-L-I-N-G, Minnesota. And then I went from there to Baltimore, Maryland. Got my 8 weeks out up there. This is where they sent me when they first put me in, where I got all my clothes and stuff, Fort Snelling. I'm glad I brought this along.
What battalion or company or
It was
platoon?
8th Army, 9th Corps. And that's about it, yes.
What did you do to...
What did you do prior to serving in the military?
Help farm.
Okay.
Helped Dad farm from the time I was probably 9 years old till I was 18.
What was the most difficult part about serving the military at the time?
Didn't have nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
Wasn't nothing too severe. You had to sleep with your rifle. That's the one thing. If you didn't, somebody liable to shoot you.
What did you do after you got out of the military?
Come back and worked the packing plant in Storm Lake. I couldn't get out of shackling hogs. I done that for 3 years, and I said if we can't go up, they'd hire some other guys, and they'd put them right up where they could bone hams and all of that. Made me mad because they wouldn't let me go up there, so I said, stick it. So I come to Cherokee and I hauled water softeners, and grain feed for Burkhart's, all these farmers all around out here. Then I went from there to Roush trucking and haul cattle and hogs and sheep and whatever you could get in the truck. And I went from there to Christensen Brothers, Lubeck Oil Company. Hauled gasoline and fuel oil for about 119 years.
What skills or characteristics about yourself did you feel served you well during your military service?
I get along with everybody, if that's what you mean. I never got stuck in a can or anything like that, or in behind bars. Volunteered once, and the guy sent me to Washington, D.C., and I went and walked up to the front door and got a hold of the handle, and that was far enough. I got back out of there again.
Did you serve during peacetime or wartime?
was cleanup, you might say.
Okay.
Yeah, and about the highest thing was just about something like the ceiling. Everything else was level. They just bombed the crap out of them. I was in Sendai, Japan, and if you've seen on television, seeing where all that mud and stuff was rolling in, you've probably seen that program. I was stationed right there, right next to the water.
Where all did you, where were you stationed when you served?
Over in Sendai, Japan.
Just in Sinai, Japan?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went right from Baltimore, Maryland, and 3 days home. 3 days home, and then went to Yokohama, Japan.
What medals and ribbons did you earn during your service?
How did I what?
What medals did you earn during your service?
You mean
Or
what,
ribbons?
what rank or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a T5 corporal.
Did you get any medals or ribbons during your time of service?
All I got was for shooting, expert shooting. I had a whole stack of them about that long. They always knew us guys when we was from Iowa, we could just hit the old target. And then we got shooting birds out there. They didn't like that very well.
Very.
We shot M1s, bullet about that long. They're dangerous within 3 miles. Oh boy, that old rifle kick. Oh. The old shoulder black and blue, and I'd spend up putting a half a day out there at the rifle range. Then you go on bivouac and go out in timbers in Pennsylvania and stuff like that before we ever went overseas. Oh, snakes and everything else out there. You down like this with the rifle and crawl on the ground, knees and elbows. I didn't like that very well. Me and snakes don't get along with a darn. In fact, if I can, I kill every one of them I can find. I think that's about it for it.
Could you please tell us your name, rank, and the branch of the military you served in?
I'm Oral Melvin Saxby. I served in the Army, U.S. 55250188.
Now, what war era did you serve in?
Korean conflict.
How old are you now, Orwell?
That's a good question. 83.
Were you volunteered or were you drafted in?
I was drafted.
You were drafted? No. How did the drafting work back then?
Oh, you got a card, and if you didn't contest it, you had so long, and at that time, I think I was born and raised in Peterson, but I had the option. I was working up, living with my brother-in-law Spencer, and when my time come, I actually left from Spencer, from Clay County, and you just let it ride with the tide, I guess.
Where'd you do your basic?
Fort Riley, Kansas, the 10th Mountain Division. Well, it was supposed to be one of the best infantries.
And what was the basic? What was the boot camp like for you, Orwell?
Well, it was general. We had anything from M1s, carbines, rockets to 4.2 mortars, and it was basically heavy weapons is what it was. And I guess we qualified for it. Our crew, what was in the barracks and stuff like that. And I held on to about 8 of my buddies from basic, and I've been to 6 of their funerals, but nobody else was left, but the rest of them weren't around here, but I've been to, yeah, my comrades are gone.
What did you do prior to going into the service?
I graduated from Peterson in 48. I was plumbing for Fastenal Hardware in Peterson, and my spare time I was with the Sullivan Bulldogs playing semi-pro football, so whatever.
I never would have paid you for a football player, Orville.
I got 4 years in high school and under 4 years of semi-pro before I went to service, and I made battalion in service. I put my name in. I made it, and I bumped heads with the 49ers, and I said it's time for me to go elsewhere. So I told them to put me back in school or something, and I moved on. I didn't want to end my career with that, but I was in shape. I could pick you up and put you on my shoulders and carry you. Yeah.
That would be impressive.
Huh?
That would be impressive, Orville.
I squatted down and carried about 250 or 300 pounds. We didn't have no weights when we was out manure or anything, so that was our exercise. Manhandling somebody.
Did you ever see like active combat?
The verge of it, yeah. My Army buddies did, more so. Kid from Nebraska, he was with a 4.2 mortar crew, 8-man. He was the only one standing live. Yeah. You talked to him face to face, you didn't tap him on the shoulder or anything. When he comes to see you, or I went out to see him, you talk face to face. I mean, it was his life or what he was touching, but he's left us too.
What battles or campaigns did you participate in?
I was mostly, what do you want to call it? I was shifted into the engineers, construction or combat, and I was doing more the building or destroying. I could go out one day and build a bridge, the next day I'd go out with dynamite and blow something up. I mean, we was working compatible with all the infantry and maybe the artillery or tanks. We made pits for the tanks and all that stuff. I mean, it was just one of them things, actually lived on maneuvers, so to speak.
Okay. When did you get out of the service?
I went in January 52 and got out 2 years later, for first part of February, in 54, 2 years.
What did you do after leaving the service?
My rank come out as a corporal. They waved, what do you want to call it, rockers at me, and I said, I'm going home. I didn't want to be a sergeant and re-up anymore. I was done. When I come home from service, well, I took up plumbing, and then I got in with Standard Oil, and it was, I don't know what it calls, fertilizer, no. Fertilizer and chemicals and propane, and I was there about 20 years, and I up there, sat on the fence, because they sold part of it off, and that was my bread and butter, and so I ended up getting in with the school system as what you call it, one of the head custodians. I was floating from all the buildings and taking care of anything that a jackknife or a pencil, and could be a carpenter, plumber, electrician, whatever. I was the handyman for about 20 years.
Would you say any of the skills that you learned while in the service have transitioned into like after you got out?
Well, like I say, was being in the construction, got a little more knowledge on electricity, I mean wiring and stuff. Plumbing, I had that, but we used that when we was doing construction, plumbing, and knowing how to read a ruler and what's called a jackknife or something, you could be a carpenter, so to speak. So, and the knots I had roughly took up a few years before that when I worked was a scout for a few years, and I learned some of the knots there, and I carried them on in the service. We used knots there, and my family didn't have enough money to send me to camps and stuff, so I didn't follow the issue. I mean, like now, you have programs to make money to go to camp. And I didn't, a lot of folks didn't have it. It was odd jobs in summertime to make clothes for me to go to school. So I didn't get to do the frills, so to speak, but.
I haven't found them that thrilling, or it's
Huh?
okay. I said I haven't found them that thrilling, it's okay. And did you get any medals or ribbons while you were in the service?
I got an occupation ribbon, and I don't know, I haven't applied for them. I just left them in the shop. There's some there, and maybe during basic or something, I had the rifle and stuff, the frills and trills like you see in some of the uniforms. I haven't got all the finagles, all them out. I wear what I have been given or stuff that I work on with the VFW, with the, some people bring them back from different things they go to, and district and state conventions and stuff. Otherwise, minimal, well, I got maybe a church one on there, a cross, or something else like that. I have earned or my own, and otherwise most of them are going through what the club has donated back into up to the guys.
What would you, like during your time in the service, what would you say was the most difficult part of being in the service?
Like everybody else, I would say January 27th, I was married, and first 2 weeks I was gone. Separate after you married, so to speak. Go to basic to live with so, and that way, and then shipped out and out. So yeah, it was rough a little bit to move away from home when you could have. A lot of kids didn't go. They made their roots and started life or tried to, and I had to start mine when I come back, and we done okay. And we've been, so to speak, we've been married 61 or 62 years. 52, yeah. 62 years.
I think that's all the questions I have.
Well, my other accomplishments around town here, I've been with the scouting for 51, and I don't know how long I've been with the club. This year, so to speak, I was Citizen of the Year for the Cherokee County, and as last week or just blood drive, I made 17 gallons. I don't know if that's impressive, but I did it.
Well, coming from a guy, like I'm terrified, so I can't give blood, but it sounds impressive to me.
No, the reason on that, I go in and these guys, these gals, they know, most of them know me, they've been there a couple of times, and knew, and I said, well, are you practicing today? She's needle. I said, "You done good." I mean, I give him the benefit of the doubt. Because I had one that he was told that, and they taped it and I left. But I mean, it was just principle. Yeah, you get used to it. I've had different ones, needles in me. But yeah, I need to have that. Live with the flow.
Would you say any of the skills you learned in the military have helped you be a better scout leader?
Well, yes, I think you're thrown into a mixing pot. I didn't have too many so-called colored people around me. That's a better word to say for it. Anyway, I didn't have them. I had a few after they toned them down to meet our demands of the white guy. But anyway, I had a couple of Mexicans. They do anything with you and work with you. And yeah, with a mixing pot like we have now with scouting and stuff like that, I have to figure out what they want to be called, you know, by name or what. And from there on, if you want Johnny to do this or do that, you ask them to carry part of the weapon or something like that, they will do it. But you don't really call them what you want to call them. You call them by name or what they want to be called. And that's why I'm kind of choosy with these boys that if I don't know the name, I say son or something like that. That don't irritate anybody. But you throw out a name, you have to respect who they are and and then ask them what they want to accomplish and stuff like that. You don't want to get off on the wrong foot with them, because I think this new boy partially likes me. Outside of some of the other ones, they kind of test you, but I can go on one-on-one with, like Victor or something like that. He'll freely tell me what's going on. But he's come out of his shell. Because, you know, with us talking to him, one-on-one stuff, but that's what I think has gained more recognition, that the kids know I'll go so far, but I want a little coming back, so to speak. That's why I do shavings, and they say, "Why do you start fire?" They will need, don't they?
Oh, I can do a few times. You can help me out. Very scanned out.
I know, you don't want to blow on your face all the time.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Could you please tell us your name, rank, and the branch of service you served with?
My name is Gerald Clark, and I was a seaman in the Air Division of the Navy.
Okay. What war era did you serve in?
Well, the Korean was on then when I was serving.
Okay. Were you volunteered or were you drafted?
I volunteered
Okay. Why did you volunteer?
because I was coming up to my draft number for the Army and stuff, and I wanted to go into the to the Navy. So.
Okay. Where did you take your basic training?
In San Diego.
In San Diego.
Naval Naval base in San Diego there.
Yeah. I think I've had 3 other guys tell me they've taken their basic training in San Diego.
Yeah, well, it's either there or up at the Chicago at the Great Lakes. There were just the 2 bases for basic training at that time.
Okay, I didn't know that. What was your battalion or company or platoon?
Well, we just had a number when I was in the service. I mean, we was in '64. It was when I was in basic training. That was our group number and stuff like that. And then after that, after I got out of there, I was transferred up to San Francisco, the Alameda Naval Air Station, and stuff. And then I spent about 2.5 years there, and I was in a division where
there was 15 of us in two groups. There was actually 30 and 15 in one group and 15, and we worked every other day. And then we launched the seaplanes, and they'd go out patrol up and down the coast and stuff there during the war and stuff. And then they also trained pilots, and every 6 months we get a bunch of new pilots in. So,
How old are you when you volunteered? I forgot to ask that.
I was 20.
You were 20. Okay. Then did you live in Cherokee before you went into the service?
I lived there all my life.
Okay, what was Cherokee like before you went in?
Oh, I don't know. It's changed some, but but it's pretty much the same thing. The main street and everything is about the same, other than a few new buildings. Coming up to 59 where they build new buildings and stuff along there. But when I was in school at that time, and then there was nothing up that way. The furthest thing up that way was. It used to be where Fairway is, and it used to be a drive-in there.
Huh. I never knew Fairway used to be a drive-in.
Yeah.
What did you do prior to going into the service?
Well, I went in just about 4 months after I graduated and stuff, and I worked as a carpenter for a guy that was in the construction building houses. So,
Okay. What was your job when you were in the service? What did you do?
that's what I done when I was in the service, was launch these seaplanes.
Oh, okay.
For that 2.5 years, and then I went aboard ship, and our ship was designed to haul new aircraft over to Japan during the Korean War, and then we'd take new ones over there and pick up the old ones and bring them back for overhaul and stuff. And then about every 7 months or so, we'd make a round trip from there, and then we would stop, sometimes go to Hawaii and stop in there and drop off some stuff or pick some stuff up, and then go on over to Japan. And then I made a couple side trips with them. We went to Philippines, took a bunch of aircraft down there to give to the Philippine government. And then one of the last trips I took, we went to Vietnam. And we took aircraft down there, and we went up to Saigon River, right to the town of Saigon, unloaded our aircraft there in the ships. It was 50 miles up the river with our carrier. I was on a small carrier and stuff, and we mainly was just to haul stuff with it. We didn't launch any aircraft or anything off of it.
Yeah. What characteristics about yourself do you feel served you really well during your time in the service and after you got out?
Oh, it's an experience of growing, from being, home, and being out on your own in a sense, and you learned a lot of things and what to do, and then I got to see part of the world and everything, and I actually kind of enjoyed the service.
Did you? Okay. What year did you get out?
1954.
Okay.
So I went in 1950 and got out 1954.
Okay. What did you do after you got out of the military?
What did I do?
Yeah, what did you do after you?
Well, my father had a tree service business back then and stuff, so when I got out, I went into work with him and everything, and then after he passed away, I continued the tree service for 35 more years. So.
Okay. Did you receive any medals or ribbons while you were in the service?
Yeah, I had honorable, discharge honorable, and I had American Defense and the Korean Defense and the good conduct, and I had a couple of them. I can't even think of what they are now.
Right. And during your time in service, what would you say was the most difficult part for you?
Oh, just being away from your family and stuff like that, and friends, You know, nobody knew. I knew nobody that was in my group other until we got together, you know, and stuff like that. And it took a while to adjust, you know, being, being saying out there all by yourself. And
I think that's all I have for questions. Do you have any stories you want to share with me, or?
oh, there's some stories and stuff. I mean, they're kind of, you know, when we was in there at Alameda, we had these big PBMs, what the aircraft was, and they were the big gull-shaped things, and they carried bomb shelters under the wings. And well, when they was going to go to fly from the United States to Hawaii, they had to put, instead of bombs up, they had to put great big drums of gas up in there for extra gas to get to Hawaii and stuff like that and stuff. And one day when they was taxing them down to launch them and stuff like that, well, they always leave those bomb days open for some reason or other, anyhow. And one of those big gas tanks fell out of there. And luckily it didn't explode. You know, they just started leaking gas. But I mean, but that's one of them things.
Yeah. Pretty nasty then.
Yeah. And the one time we was coming back from Philippines, when we was going past Guam, we run into a hurricane or and stuff, and the waves was getting. Our flight deck was about 50 feet off of the water and stuff, and we was taking waves over the top of that flight deck and stuff like that. And that old ship, when it hit them waves, would just like that.
Oh no, no, thank you. I'll be content to stick with my filming.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My name is Richard Carroll Waterbury, that's C-A-R-O-L, and I attained the rank of machinist mate, second class petty officer, and I served from December 1953 to November 13th, 1957. I was in the United States Navy, served aboard the ship, the USS McGinney DE 365. I graduated out of basic in 54, early 54, went to machinist mate school, Great Lakes, Illinois, and then I caught the ship in Pearl Harbor. It was in dry dock in August of 54.
What war era did you serve in?
Korea. I was at the tail end. I went in 53, the armistice had already been signed, but they extended it out to 1955. In December, New Year's Eve, 1954, we was in Pusan Harbor, and I set foot on Korean soil, just so I could say I did that. In the Navy, you're normally on water all the time, but I set foot on Korean soil.
Were you a volunteer or cadet?
I was enlisted. I'm not hearing your question. Get over here closer to me. My hearing's a little bad.
Were you drafted or volunteer?
I enlisted, volunteer, yeah.
Why did you volunteer?
Why?
Yeah.
My brother was already serving aboard this same ship, and it was early in the winter, so I decided I just well get started. And if I was going to go into the service, I wanted to pick a branch that I wanted, not something he was going to hand to me. And so when I got in there, I tried to make the best of everything I could.
Where did you take your basic training?
San Diego, California.
What battalion or company were you in?
I was in Company 350.
Describe what your life in Cherokee was like when you were in the service.
What my life was like where? In Cherokee. I wasn't from Cherokee. I was from a little town called Swea City, Iowa. That's Sweacity. And we didn't come to Cherokee until 1959. And I was a little farm boy.
What was your job during your service?
I was in the engine room. Our engines were steam turbine, and in our engine room we had the generators, electrical boards, of course all the pumps and everything to make everything work.
What was the most difficult time during your service?
Well, my most difficult time probably would have been when we left Busan, Korea. We were headed for Formosa because the Chinese were trying to start up the Korean War again, and we had to go down there. They was evacuating some of the islands down there, and Formosa now is called Taiwan, and Chiang Kai-shek from China was in Formosa. Also, when we was headed for the Far East, when we left Midway, we rode the tail end of a typhoon from there into Yokosuka, Japan, and we took 2 degrees roll more than our ship was supposed to. They could have lost me and my older brother right there.
Wow.
What skills or characteristics about yourself do you feel served you out during your service?
What characteristics and skills do you feel served you best during your time in the service?
Being a little farm boy, you're able to adjust to whatever situation comes up, and when you get into the service, it's about the same thing. You start adjusting as to the Navy life and the life of your comrades and the life you have to live aboard ship in a confined area, and you learn to take care of yourself. You do your own washing, everything.
Did you serve during peacetime or war?
Well, it was actually still during wartime, because we still had people on the DMZ, and there were still shots being fired, and there were still people dying.
What did you do after you served in the military?
I was discharged in November of '57. I come home, and about a week later, I was working as a service station attendant for Standard Oil Company in Swea City.
When did you come to Cherokee? 59, you said?
I worked in there from '57, December '57, until August of 1959. In 1959, I had made an application for the state police, and I went through my interviews and was selected as a state trooper. And I went to patrol school there in August and September of 1959 for 5 weeks. And then October 1st, 1959, I was sworn in as a state trooper. My assignment was Cherokee, and I came to Cherokee that afternoon and checked in at the post headquarters here. And then he said, well, why don't you go home and make arrangements for moving down here? And so I went home and I made my arrangements for moving down here. And my wife and I come down here and looked for a place to live, and there wasn't any housing available. And so we lived in an apartment on the north end of Bunker's Cleaners, which is now the Panda. right south of us was Donnie Seckler, and his wife was Roy Schwinn's daughter. And they were in the apartment right next to us. So,
what campaigns or battles did you took place?
okay, I have I have the Korean ribbon, and I have the China service ribbons for when we went down to Formosa, and I carry the American Defense ribbon, also the Good Conduct ribbon. There's no battle stars, no nothing. My older brother, who you see me pictured here, he had a couple battle stars. He went in 51 and they was doing shore bombardments and everything. And when I went aboard there in August of 54, they were rebarreling the 5-inch mounts. And they put on brand new sonar gear while they were in dry dock. And that was our main duties, was for anti-submarine warfare. But we also would do shore bombardments and so forth. We also carried 40 millimeter pom-poms, they call them, and you'll see the mounts just after the superstructure here. And then we had the mouse traps went off the top, off the front. Then we had the K-gun shot off the side. What they call the ash cans are just nothing but a barrel, and they go off one on each side of the fantail. Submarines don't have much of a chance.
Oh, doesn't sound like it. Would you be willing to tell us a little bit about your brother and his time in the military?
Yes, I'm very proud of my brother. Of course, there was 3 of us in the service, all of us Navy. And I'll start with my oldest brother. And he went in 1951. He also was married when he went in. And he went through basic in San Diego, California, at the Naval Training Center, and like I did. And then he went aboard ship, the USS McGinney, and he caught that in Pearl Harbor. And then he took and they went to the Far East, and he was involved in the Korean War, and did shore bombardments. And he told me one time that when he was on the fantail, that there was a shell coming in, and he dove down the after hatch, and the shell went off on a surface blast, and there was shrapnel all over the back deck. Now, if he'd have stayed up there, he'd probably have been dead or hurt real bad. But his firstborn was in Tripler Army Hospital in Pearl Harbor, and that was shortly after I got there. He was born in October, and I got to babysit with a little baby, and they lived down on Waikiki. I wasn't so fortunate. I lived in downtown Honolulu when I was there, and on Canal Street. But he went to machinist mate school after he'd been aboard ship for a bit. And he went to machinist mate school, then back aboard ship. And he also attained the rank of 2nd class petty officer. And he trained me well, because him and I worked the same shift and the same liberty parties. I slept just above him in our bunks, which was tiers of 3, and we did everything together. He was my mentor and did a damn good job of it. And when he left, that whole bunch left together. And so I was one of the ranking men for the engine rooms, and I was only a fireman. Now, when you go into recruit, you get 1 stripe. When you get out of there, you get 2, and you're an apprentice. When you get 3, you're either a fireman or seaman or whatever. And then from there on, you go into the petty officer groups where you have a crow, and we call it the crow. And then you have 1 stripe for 3rd class, 2 stripes for 2nd class, and 3 stripes for 3rd class. And when them guys left, they sent me to the after engine room as officer in charge as a little bitty fireman. That's kind of unheard of, you know, but it's like, kind of like leaving a private in charge of the whole company. Because that's about what I was, a private at that time. See, when I made third class, then I was equal to a corporal. And when I made second class, I was equal to a sergeant. See, and I can show you those back there if you want to look at them. But it was very, very interesting to be with him. We toured Hong Kong together and Japan together and went to a lot of shrines together and things like that. We stayed pretty much on the straight and narrow. And the first thing we'd do when we hit the beach was go over and get a good meal at the EM Club. But we did a lot of touring together. And when he got out, he went to work for the power plant up at Fairmont, Minnesota. And there they had the generators like we had in the engine room. They had boilers, which we didn't have, but we studied boilers in machinist mate school, and we knew all about boilers because that's where our steam came from. And we also studied evaporators because that's where our fresh water come from for us and the boilers. And then we studied refrigeration, which refrigeration keeps your food safe aboard ship. And so we studied a little electrician, and he never did, but I did, was when we would get ready to double up the electrical boards, you know, from the forward engine room to the after engine room, I would do that. I had an electrician train me how to do that. I asked him to train me so that in case we got hit and he was dead, I could do it, you know. You want to be self-sufficient, and you will be self-sufficient if you're going to make that ship run. Everybody has to do their job and have to do it right. It has to be in order and on time. And you learn to be able to not only take care of yourself, you'll take care of your friends, you'll take care of your ship, because that ship is your salvation. You're out in the middle of the ocean and there is no land in sight. The nearest land is right straight down, and it's no good to you. And they asked me, were you a good swimmer? I can't swim a stroke. Never did learn to swim. I'm a sinker, what they call a sinker. I drop it, I can lay down, face, do a dead man's float in the water and sink just like a rock. I lay there on the bottom of the pool, blow my air out, all the air I got, and then come up. Can't swim. I can go far enough maybe to just get to a life raft. It ain't too far away, but that's it.
I think that's all the questions I have for you. Do you have any questions for me, Ben?
You want to know anything about what I did when I come down here? I know anything about...
When you got done with all service and you came back here, when after you got done with state trooper, then what did you do?
Well, after I got done with the state trooper, then I was the sheriff for 4 years here. And after December of '92, I left the sheriff's office, and in '94, I started working for the school system. And I have been with the school system ever since. But during this period of time, we left the apartments up over Bunkers. We moved to South 7th in 1960. And in 1970, we moved on to the bypass out here and had an acreage. We started raising livestock. And 73, we bought 80 acres west of town where we now reside. And at one time, we was farrowing 14 sows 4 times a year, feeding out 2 batches of pigs, selling 2 batches of feeder pigs, lambing out 50 ewes, and calving out 70 cows, tilling 130 acres, and putting up my hay and so forth, and taking care of my livestock and my pastures. And I'm still working, and I'm 80 years old.
I don't know if we asked you, like when you enlisted, how old were you?
I was 20.
You were 20 when you enlisted?
Yeah, I was 20 when I enlisted. My birthday is in September, 9/21/33, and I enlisted that following December, and I was 20 years old. I got married when I was 22. I got out when I was 24. I joined the state police when I was 26, and let's see, that's about it. But most everything has been in the odd numbers. You know, I joined in 53 in the Navy. I was born in 33. Joined the Navy when I in 53. Got out in 57. Joined the state police in 59. Retired in 88. That was an even number. I won the election in 88. And I left the sheriff's office December. Last day is December 1992. But we'd be married now. Be 58 years, November 2nd. And I was married in 1955. November 2nd, 1955. I was home on leave.
So could you please tell us your name, rank, and branch of the military you served with?
Neil Phipps, Marine Corps, United States Marine Corps, and I was corporal. I was in for 2 years. I signed up for the Marine Corps. Instead of being drafted into the Army, you could sign up to go to the Marines instead, and I chose that route.
Okay, so why did you choose to volunteer?
Well, I was going to get drafted. My number was 46 back in the old lottery system, and I was going to get drafted. I wanted to play college football, and I thought that was a better way for me to reach that goal as far as playing college football was to be in the Marines and be in that much better shape, I guess.
So you, how old are you? You were probably just out of high school, weren't you?
I went to college for 1 year, so I was 19, going on 20 when I went in.
Okay. And you said it was like a lottery system, so how'd the draft work? When you
They drew birthdays out of a basket basically, and every day of the year, so you could go 1 through 365, and I was number 46 or something to that effect.
Interesting. So where did you do your basic training?
I was in San Diego, and then we went from San Diego to Camp Pendleton in California as well. After that, I went to some training in Quantico, Virginia, and then I was stationed in Kansas City at the IRS building. Now, we didn't have a base for Marines, and we printed out all the checks for all the Marines throughout the world, retired and active Marines.
That's really cool. And then this, like, what war era was this during?
Vietnam. For my first year, it was still a hot conflict, if you will, and then it got over for the second year I was in service.
Okay. And when, like, what was your battalion, company, or platoon? Like,
We really didn't have that. As, there were in the IRS building where we were at. We were doing the microfiche. That was an old way of storing and retrieving records.
Okay.
So it's kind of like all the check stubs. They would sort on microfiche, and they're little plastic pieces of a deal. So there were only like 6 guys.
Okay, yeah. So you never saw active combat?
I didn't see active combat. No.
Okay.
My platoon in boot camp was 2113, but not combat.
All right. What did you do prior to serving in the military?
Well, like I said, I got out of high school, went to college in northern Colorado in Greeley, and I was there for a year. Enjoyed college, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do, so this was a better option for me to kind of get things going and know which way I wanted to head afterwards. I did know I wanted to play college football, but you had to have a major of some sort and go to college, go to some classes once in a while there too. So.
Yeah. And did you say, like, were there any skills or characteristics that that helped you later on after you? got out
Oh,
of the
most
military?
definitely. The discipline and attention to detail, organization skills, being prepared to kind of face adversity, if you will. You know, all those things really important. I guess one of the things the Marines probably pride themselves the most is attention to detail and the discipline factor. You have to have your everything buttoned up the right way and no little piece of thread hanging out from your sleeve or any of those kind of things.
I don't think I would do well in the Marines. I
You
don't
have to have your
much
hair
attention to
combed and all
detail.
those things, Brian.
Yep. What would you say was the most difficult part about serving in the military at this time?
Well, knowing that you could or would go to war eventually. Every Marine's a combat or artilleryman first. So knowing that in the back of your mind, you know, you could always be going to war. I wouldn't say it was difficult, but it kept you focused a little bit more. I think when people wanted to stray away from classes or whatever it might be that we're working on, they'd get your attention that way.
Yeah. And you didn't live in Cherokee. You didn't live here in Cherokee, but when you went into the Marines.
Yeah, I did. I was.
You did?
I graduated in Cherokee in 1970. Went to Greeley, like I said, and then came back, and then went into the service the fall of '71.
Okay.
And then I came back in the fall of '73, and I worked for Don Hazelhoff till school started that next year. And then I went to college and worked construction in the summertime most every year after that. And again, that kind of goes back to that Marine Corps, I think, a little bit. I really like to have something I could do that something was done. You know, I poured cement, or I shingled a house, or I painted, or whatever it might be. I've got something done, and I think that kind of goes back to my farm background a little bit, as well as the Marine Corps.
And so, I know you're the principal here at the high school now. So I know you were the head coach before that, weren't you? How'd that happen?
I've been teaching since the fall of 1978, so 30 plus years. I've been teaching and coaching. You have to go back to school every so often to keep your license current. I ended up getting my administrative degree, not really thinking about ever using it, but when Mr. Hunnicky retired at the end of the year, it was kind of late and it was really hard to find somebody, we thought, so I kind of got drafted again, so to speak, and I became principal, and it went pretty well last year, so we're doing it again this year.
Yeah, as a high school student, I personally feel it's been a lot better with you as the principal.
Well, he did a lot of good things. I just doing things a little different, maybe. But,
So, have any of those Marine skills helped you be the principal here?
Oh, I think so. The kids understand, you know, I'm going to say things and I'm going to do things, but I'm not going to hold a grudge against them. You know, when they do something wrong, I'll talk to them about it, and then we're going to go on, and the next day is the next day. Just don't make that mistake. We don't want to make that mistake again, and I guess I kind of follow through that way. I'm not going to discipline students the same way we were disciplined in the Marine Corps, obviously, but I guess that mindset a little bit. I'm going to talk to them, try to kind of be a straight shooter, so to speak, and tell them, here's the things you did wrong, here's what I want you to do, and hopefully we can kind of come to an agreement.
Did you, you said you served at the IR, you helped out at an IRS building, so did you get any medals or ribbons? Or?
No,
Okay.
I wasn't. They didn't give you medals for printing out checks, I guess.
You never know.
I like to think I would have been okay if I would have served in the. But I tell you what, when the things are happening in a battle zone, it's got to be tough and heart wrenching. And studying that, and talking to guys that did go through that, I like to think I would have followed through, but boy, you really don't know till the thing happens. Been around a car accident or two, and when some of my athletes have gotten hurt, I keep my wits about me, and I think that kind of goes back to that Marine Corps training a little bit. I think if somebody gets hurt, you can't fly off the handle and lose your composure. You've got to kind of keep your mind on what's got to be done and take care of business, and I think that goes back to it a little bit as well.
Yeah, that's good story. I don't think I actually have any other questions. A lot of it is, most of my other questions pertain to stuff that happened if you saw active combat and stuff. So.
Well, like I said, the service was a great thing for me. It wasn't something that you enjoyed doing it, going through boot camp and making sure your shoes were laced the right way. The laces had to go left over right all the time, and your belt buckle had to be lined up with the zipper, and your tie had to be right in the same spot. They measured how long your mustache was even, and So all those kind of things, it seemed nitpicky, but the way I understand it and reading about it and trying to understand why they did some of those things, if they can't trust you to take care of your buttons on your shirt, it's going to be pretty hard for you to be trusted in fighting in a battle. And I think that's why they pay attention to detail in those things, because then when you go into a battle scene, you know, that stuff's going to become second nature. You're going to follow directions, follow orders, and don't ask any questions right at that time. I think that kind of goes hand in hand.
So, like, another question I kind of have: how was boot camp? What was that like?
It was tough. I really enjoyed it. You kind of get into a routine where you're getting up in the morning, you're running, you go eat breakfast, and then you go work out again and do something, doing up downs or physical fitness testing or some sort of course or something like that. And then you go to some academic stuff, maybe learn how to fire a weapon or clean it and take care of the wind and adjust your sights for that. And so it was kind of back and forth, and I really enjoyed it. You get into a mindset there, and then you have to have your shoes polished and cleaned and pressed and all that kind of stuff. So you know, it was a very regimented day, and you kind of fall into that routine, and it was kind of nice in a lot of ways. You knew what to expect each day. You knew you were going to do these things, and there might be a few different wrinkles, but for the most part, it's boom, this is going to happen, and you don't have a lot of time for. There wasn't a lot of drama or a lot of goofing around with your buddies. You know, it was get that stuff done, and we're going to go on to the next objective, if you will, or next thing that you got to learn to get out of boot camp.
And like, did you just retire from the military, or?
No, I just was in the 2 years, and I like I said, I wanted to play college football,
Okay.
and that was kind of one of the main goals I had. So after I got out, I started working out here at the high school. Actually, now it's right next to the wrestling room. That was where the weight room was at that time, and I'd come in at night, and some of the coaches would let me in and lift. And after I got off work at construction, like I said, and lift, and I did that and trained until the fall of '74, and then I went to UNI and went to school and did a lot of other things that way too.
I'm Sergeant Edward E. Bolger. I joined the Army in 1966 at the age of 17, and I spent 7 years in the military.
How old are you?
Now,
Yeah.
65.
Where were you a volunteer or drafted?
I was a volunteer. I enlisted in the Army. So, for 3 years.
What are you gonna put? Dish soap and her finger. See that ivory soap right there? Yep. Put a little squirt of that in. No, it's me. Squirt of that in there. And then
Why did you volunteer?
Pardon?
Why did you volunteer?
A lot of my friends got drafted and figured, well, instead of getting drafted, I'd join to go in the military, and because I quit school when I was 16 years old and got a job, and when I turned 17, that's what I always wanted to do. So I enlisted in the United States Army, and
What were you based?
I took
Italian company or Jim?
I took boot camp in El Paso, Texas, and from there I stayed at El Paso after boot camp and became an automatic weapons specialist. And after that schooling, I was sent to Vietnam, and I worked with Twin 40 Dusters, track, And I have a book or pictures of what I was on, if you wanted to see that. And I worked on 50 caliber machine guns. And then I came, the first year I was there, then I came back to El Paso. Then I was sent back over to Vietnam. So I spent 2 tours of Vietnam. Then when I came back home, I just had a couple months left in the service, so then I re-enlisted. And then I spent, from there, they sent me to Alaska to the Arctic Test Center. And we tested all nerve gases and stuff during the winter months when it was 60, 70 below. We'd blow up the canisters and we'd measure the cloud of nerve agent and stuff like that in the winter. We tested a lot of military equipment to see how it works in the wintertime. If the Arctic weather would freeze up the guns, or and then we tested Hawk missiles up there, and we fired the missile, and in the cold weather it would take off slower because it was that cold that it would. But then once the engine light got warmer, it picked up speed, and then we detonate it. And then we had a big thing to measure the cloud of where the fire was, on what temperature. And then we'd do that in the summertime and measure it again, and that would show us what the weather, 70-degree weather would do to 45 or 50 below zero. And it was real significant that that missile didn't have as much effect in the cold weather. So, and nerve agent was the same way. When we do it in the summertime, the cloud would get so big, but when it's cold, it would just stay in a certain area, and it took about a half hour before the cloud of agent would start spreading out. So.
What skill or characteristic about yourself did you feel you will during your military service?
What, you have to say that a little louder, I can't.
What skills or characteristics about yourself did you feel you will during your military service?
What I did there to outside.
What skills or characteristics do you feel served you best during your time in the military?
Mainly in Vietnam is to use your head. And don't, you had to keep your cool about you when mortars are falling or somebody shooting at you, you could hear it fly by, and that that more or less opened my mind when I got out of the service, because I was more familiar about what was going on around me. Before, I never paid much attention, but during going through a war zone like that, you will stop and look, and you pay attention. And now when I drive, I see everything, because you're always looking to see if there's any hazards or.
Describe the campaign or battles in your own words if you are willing.
Okay, well, when I went in and went to Vietnam, I was with the 1st Infantry Division there, and we were sent in to, like with the infantry, we rolled in with our guns and we shot everything up. And then the infantry would be behind us and they would take over, and then we'd set up perimeter, and then the artillery guys would come in and sit, and we'd take, you know, we'd be their protection, because our guns would shoot, it'd be like throwing a hand grenade, the explosion from one of them with a 40 millimeter, whenever we shot that, it would cause a fire. And we done a lot of search and destroy missions where we rolled into a place, a village or whatever, and we burned it down. We just shot. And from there, we went down south the second time, and we sat by the Mekong River, the delta, because there, that river's so wide and a big bridge, well, the Viet Cong blew the center out. So we went and sat, and we'd shoot anything at night that went up and down the river. If there was a little tree branch floating, we'd shoot it, because you never know what's tied underneath it coming towards the bridge. And then the second time I was also attached to the 9th Infantry Division, and we done security for them. Like the movie We Are Soldiers, if you ever watch that, Mel Gibson's in that, and he stands up and says, "Where's them 40s at? Them twin 40s?" Well, that was us, because we didn't go in with the cavalry. They all flew into one spot, and that's how the war started. But usually it's the twin 40s go in first, and then we shoot it up. And
What did you learn after your service in the military?
when did I?
What did you do after you
What did you do?
got out of the service?
Got married and had kids, and I worked as a diesel mechanic and a meat cutter at one time, and that's what I'd done my whole life. And
What method and revenues did you earn during your service of time?
I didn't hear.
What medals and ribbons did you serve? Would you earn during your service?
I got United States Defense Ribbon, the French Ribbon, a Vietnam Ribbon with 6 clusters. As cluster is campaigns that, what, you know, like one push, like there's gonna be one battle somewhere, that be a campaign, and we was in 6 different campaigns. I have 1 Purple Heart. I got Army Commendation medals and certificates, and that's about it on them. So
What was the most difficult part about your service in the military that time, at that time?
What was the most difficult?
Mhm.
I would say Vietnam was the most difficult, but you know, I did enjoy, you might think I'm crazy, but I did enjoy going over, you know. I met some real good friends, but I lost a lot of good friends. So, you know, that's the worst part of the whole thing is your good friends that you were with got shot or hit by mortars or. And on the track I was on, at Tet Offensive, I had in Saigon, I had my right track blowing off my track, and then once I hit a man-detonated mine, a 500-pounder that blew the whole right front idler wheels and everything off, and then we got hit by an RPG, and that went through the track and blew our motor up, and that was one of the worst ones because there we were sitting ducks out in the road with no protection, and I thank God we had another track with us to help protect us because we had to sit and wait for like a tow truck, a big lowboy would come with a crane and they'd pick it up and set it on the lowboy, and that was one of the worst nights I've had in a long time there because they were all around us and you know there ain't much you could do but shoot. By the time morning got around, both of our tracks were almost out of ammunition and we carried maybe 4,000 rounds of 40mm shells. And I don't know how many cases of 50 caliber and 60 caliber machine gun bullets and a rifle. So that was the worst one because no one else was there to help us, to help protect. Once in a while a helicopter would fly around us and he would shoot off his, well, they were at 20mm cannons like on, and when he was unloaded, well then they'd leave, so that was the worst day.
So could you please tell us your name, rank, and the branch of service you were in?
Jim Gano, U.S. Army, Spec 4,
And what war era did you serve in?
Vietnam, 1969 to 1970.
Okay. And were you a volunteer or were you drafted?
I volunteered for the draft, so I was a 2-year enlistment, but I was still U.S. Army.
And why did you volunteer?
My best friend got killed in Vietnam, 1968.
Did
I signed up December 26, 1968. His funeral was December 26, 1968.
How old were you?
19 years old.
What was your job while you were in the service?
I was an 11B. I trained for infantry, and I did that for 6.5 months in Vietnam. Ran ambushes, did all those kind of infantry things in a squad or a platoon. got injured, fell 10 feet into some boulders, hit my head and my shoulder and ruined my shoulder and hurt my neck, and medevaced out of the field. They determined that I couldn't go back to being an infantryman with my shoulder the way it was because of the weight of the rucksack. So they said that I could find a job in base camp, and they changed my MOS to the job. I'm going, whoa. So that's what they did.
Where did you take your basic?
Fort Pope, Louisiana.
And what was that like for you?
January. It's cold down there. It really is cold down there in January. I couldn't believe it.
Did you participate in any campaigns or battles?
Several. I don't even remember what we actually were into.
If you're willing, could you tell me about some of those?
Not really.
Okay, that's fine. For you, what was the most difficult part about being in the military?
Not being able to go home every night.
It's not the first time I've been told that today, so. What did you do prior to being in the military? Just a student, or?
Well, let's see. Worked at Bishop's Cafeteria when I was in junior high. When I was in high school, I worked for a photographer in his darkroom, printing all of his pictures and developing his film, and then printing up his pictures for him. Yeah, I did that.
What did you do after you got out?
Worked for a contractor that built swimming pools and built houses and built garages and built fourplex living and 12-plex apartments, and then of course everything that went with a swimming pool too, and poured a lot of concrete. Yeah, built a lot of things.
What kind of characteristics and skills do you think served you best while you were in the military and after you got out?
I've said it every time that I've talked to a scout. Whatever I learned in scouts took and helped me survive in basic training, and it also gave me an in with the sergeants, because they didn't have to teach me very much. I already had it. But there was things that they taught me that I didn't have. So between the two of them, maybe that's why I survived Vietnam. No, I survived Vietnam because I took that fall in there and I got back to base camp. And I was in a nice cushy area and a bed of my own. So I guess I did have a place to go at night. I wasn't like I was out in the field like I had been. Yeah.
Did you get any medals or ribbons while you were in the service?
We all got medals and ribbons. It was that kind of a war. But no, I didn't get the big one, and I didn't get any of the other ones. I didn't even get a Purple Heart, because they figured I didn't get shot. So, hey. I guess dig a hole. Yeah.
If you're willing, could you tell me a little bit about your friend who passed while he was in the service?
It's just that me and him ran the streets of Waterloo together when we were in junior high and then high school, and him and a bunch of the boys decided a year before they graduated, when they were juniors, that they were all going to take and join the Marine Corps, because they were 17 years old and they could. So they all joined the Marine Corps together. And they all went to Vietnam, and only 3 of them came home.